And whenever you're ready.
Hi everybody. Today my presentation is going to be on a cinematic universe, so to speak, that I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with. Even if you aren't, I still thought it would be a good idea to give a bit of background on exactly what I'll be presenting on for clarification purposes. So, the X-Men was a group founded in 1963 by Charles Xavier and Eric Linster. The goal of the group was to establish equality between humans and mutants alike. Charles Professor X Xavier was a founder of the X-Men. He was also a mutant. He had the power of telepathy, and he had a nonviolent approach to achieving peace between mutants and humans. Now, on to who my presentation is actually about. Eric Magneto Lancer was also a founder of X-Men. He was a mutant. He had the power of metal manipulation, and he had a more radical approach to achieving peace between mutants and humans. So, without further ado, I'll get into it. Aliens versus predators, vampires versus werewolves, and last but not least, humans versus mutants. What do all these things have in common? They're all asking you to choose a side in their fight for dominance. However, what do you do when one side has two leaders fighting for the same goal in two polar opposite ways? Who do you pick in that instance? Today, I will be speaking to you all about X-Men, specifically Charles Xavier and Eric Lancer, better known as Professor X and Magneto. I believe that although Magneto was presented to us to be a villain, he was simply misunderstood and was to achieve the same goal as Professor X. I chose this topic because I believe oftentimes in media, we see obscure versions of people and deem them as bad or evil, without truly questioning how they came to be that way. Hopefully, I will be able to help you consider that factor more often. In this speech, I will be discussing Magneto's past, his methods, and his overall goal. For starters, I would like to discuss how Magneto's painful past shaped him into the leader he became. As a child, Magneto witnessed genocide firsthand and survived it. According to Paul Morton in his The Millions article, The Survivor on Magneto, Mutants, and the Holocaust, Magneto was a Holocaust survivor. At first, the comments hinted that he was Romani, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Some years later, after a bit of narrative, it was established that Magneto was a Jew. Additionally, while being in Auschwitz, it was discovered that he was a mutant and he was being made to use his power. However, when he was not able to do that on command, his mother was murdered right in front of him, which caused a spike of anger and rage in the young male. And I actually have a clip to show you guys.
Ja, wunderbar. Großartig.
I believe that this was the starting point in the violent behavior that was later to come in his adult life. If witnessing one of the worst tragedies in history was not enough to alter his way of thinking in his adult life, his child and wife were kidnapped in an attempt to lure him out. The kidnapping led to the eventual death of his wife and child, who were murdered in an attempt for humans to capture him. Even though during this time he had been living in seclusion, very dormant, enjoying family life. He even offered to give himself up peacefully in exchange for his daughter, but his peaceful efforts still ended in tragedy. For this clip, I decided to break it down into two small segments because showing a longer clip would exceed the time limit. I'm not sure. This first portion of the clip shows him going peacefully, although if you are familiar with the cinematic installments of X-Men, you know that Magneto can be very violent and he can get that way very quickly. But in this instance, he chose to give himself up peacefully in order to make sure those he cared about was safe. a few questions for me that I hope will also raise questions for you as well. If Magneto had never experienced instances in his life where people that he cared about or closely related to never experienced any type of immediate danger, he felt their lives were in jeopardy, would he have ever become dangerous? Would he have ever become the radical character that we know today? These events heavily contributed to his unconventional methods of achieving respect for mutants alike. Yes, Magneto's methods were cruel, but he grew up watching cruelty. However, the events discussed above may have given him the mindset that cruelty was the most effective way to gain respect. Hillary Goldstein stated in her 2013 article, Xavier versus Magneto, a philosophical debate, Magneto had no desire to go quietly to camps and be exterminated by humans. To him, the only way to fight human aggression was with a show of power. This statement directly reflects to his troubled life as a child and when referencing the act of being escorted to camps and executed. I believe this only draws lines and parallels to his more difficult upbringing, to how his more difficult upbringing obscured his views on life and how things should be handled. On another hand, he simply wanted protection from youth, so we saw him fighting fire with fire very often. With that being said, Magneto's true goal was only to protect those who were oppressed, much like Professor X. As stated before, they had two different methods, but I would like to point out that we have seen something similar to this in a fictional construct before in history. In fact, Magneto was based off of Malcolm X, who was a civil rights icon. He had a radical approach and believed that it was not wrong to get physical if needed. He was inspired for Magneto's character design. Magneto was based off of Malcolm X, as Professor X was based off of Martin Luther King Jr. According to Nostal.com's 2014 article, MLK and Malcolm X, the civil rights movement and the X-Men origins. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby used the iconic civil rights leaders, Martin Luther King Jr., who was seen as having a more passive approach in the fight for civil rights, and Malcolm X, who was seen as having a more radical, who was seen as being more radical in terms for civil rights, as the inspiration behind characters Professor X and Magneto. Rather than fighting aliens and criminals, they fought against the daily oppression of humans. Much like their fictional counterparts, these two men had the same goal, to protect those who had the odds stacked against them, but they had two different ways of approaches in doing this. One approach was seen as being cruel and harmful to others, while another was seen as being tranquil and the right way to go about things, so to speak. But no man's journey is greater than another's, especially when they simply want to achieve the same goal, which is for humans to live peacefully. Now, so for this slide, I decided to include this because in one installment of the film, which was Days of Futures Past, after years of fighting, the two leaders came together to fix the critical condition that the present was in. Magneto had been quoted in saying that he did realize that, in fact, they had spent many years wasted fighting, but he was willing to come together to fix the state that they had been in. Which, in that movie, I believe mutants were on the brink of extinction, and still they came together just to make sure that that didn't happen. So they have the same goal, but it's hard to, when you, I don't want to say they had two different upbringings, but Magneto definitely went through a couple of things in his life that caused him to have an obscure view. In conclusion, after going over Magneto's past, methods, and overall goal in the fight against humans, I hope I have invoked your thoughts or questions if others who have been simply depicted as villains are just as misunderstood as Eric Winsor was. I once heard a quote that went, as children we root for the villains, but as we get older we understand. As children we root for the heroes, but as we get older we understand the villains. To me, this quote means that the older we get, the more conscious we become to how so many people, real or fiction, are multifaceted. And often, in becoming aware of that, we should really take the time out to consider this before making a judgment of the